I never told my son I read the goodbye letter he hid in his desk because when he came home that night smiling like nothing had happened, I sat across from him at dinner and realized some battles we win just by surviving, even if we never say a word about them. I found it by accident. It was a Tuesday. I remember that clearly because the dishwasher had flooded the kitchen floor again, and I'd just spent 20 minutes mopping it up before I went upstairs to deal with laundry. My son, Zach, had left his laundry bin half full again, like he always did. I was frustrated, not at him really, just tired. Work had been rough. Everything felt like a mess. It was one of those days where everything felt like too much, even the small stuff. Zach was 17 at the time. He was in that phase where he didn't say much unless you asked. But he wasn't the kind of kid to make trouble. Stayed in his room a lot. Drew. Did his schoolwork. Nothing to set off alarms. His room was tidy, cleaner than usual, actually. His bed made, his desk wiped down. The laundry bin had a couple shirts and socks, nothing major. I was about to leave when I noticed the bottom drawer of his desk was slightly open. It sounds stupid now, but I wasn't looking for anything. I thought maybe he dropped a charger or had food in there. That's all. I pulled it open just a little more and saw a plain envelope, half tucked under a notebook. No name on it. It wasn't sealed. Just folded over. I picked it up. Stood there for a second. Something about it felt wrong. It was thick paper. His handwriting on the front, just his name. I opened it. And I felt like the ground dropped out from under me. It was a letter. A goodbye letter. Not to me. Not to anyone specific. Just, from him. From Zach. He said he didn't want to hurt anyone. That this wasn't about blame. That he just didn't feel like himself anymore, and he didn't know how to fix it. That he was tired of pretending everything was fine. That it wasn't anyone's fault, especially not mine. He wrote, I just want it to stop. I'm not angry. I just don't think I belong here. I sat down on his bed and read the letter twice. I couldn't cry right away. I was too scared to even move. My first thought was, is he gone already? My second was, where is he right now? I checked the time. He was at school. I called the school, pretending to ask about something stupid. A schedule change, I think. They said he was in class. So I put the letter back where I found it. Exactly the way it was. Closed the drawer. I didn't take a picture. Didn't keep a copy. I just stood there in his room, surrounded by his drawings, his books, his clean laundry, and I felt like I was holding a secret that might crush me if I said it out loud. That night, he came home like nothing had happened. He threw his shoes off in the hallway, dropped his backpack next to the fridge, opened the cupboard looking for chips. What's for dinner? He asked. And I couldn't speak for a second. He was smiling. Like nothing had happened. We ate pasta and garlic bread. He talked about school, made a dumb joke about a kid in gym class who fell during dodgeball. He was fine. He looked fine. But I knew. I knew what he'd written. I knew where he'd been, at least in his head. I didn't ask him about it. I didn't bring up the letter. I didn't tell him I'd read it. Instead, I just kept talking. I asked him about his drawing. I told him about the broken dishwasher. I let him complain about his math teacher. And I watched him. I watched the way his smile slipped when he thought I wasn't looking. I noticed how long he stared at the floor when I said I was proud of him for turning in all his assignments on time. That week, I made excuses to be around him more. Asked him to go grocery shopping with me. Invited him to watch a movie. Pretended I needed help in the garage just so we'd spend a few more minutes together. I don't know if he noticed. Maybe he did. But he didn't say anything. Neither did I. I started checking his room more often. Quietly. Just looking. Not snooping, at least that's what I told myself. I never found another letter. Not one. I don't know if he threw them away or if there was only ever that one. He never gave it to me. He never said a word about it. And so I didn't either. Because sometimes, survival isn't loud. It's not some big moment of crying and hugging and talking it all out. Sometimes, survival is quiet. It's garlic bread at the dinner table. It's laughing at a dumb joke. It's your kid showing up again the next day like he decided, for reasons he may never say out loud, to keep going. And you don't want to risk breaking that by pushing too hard. So I stayed quiet. I never told him I read the letter. Not then. Not ever. A few weeks after I found the letter, I started noticing changes. Subtle things. Zach started staying up later. I'd hear him pacing in his room at night, or walking quietly to the kitchen around 2 or 3 a.m. The lights would flick on, then off. Sometimes the fridge would creak open. I'd listen from my room, completely still. He'd always shut his door softly after, like he didn't want to wake me. But I was already awake. One night, I got up and met him in the hallway. He froze when he saw me. "You okay?" I asked. He nodded too fast. "Just couldn't sleep." "You want tea or something?" He shook his head. "I'm fine, Mom." "Really?" I didn't push it. I just nodded and walked back to my room. The next day, I texted his old therapist behind his back. We hadn't seen her in over a year. Zach had said he was doing better, and I believed him at the time. I told her what I found. I told her he didn't know I read it, and that I didn't want to scare him off. She gave me some advice, soft things. Ways to open a conversation, signals to look for. Nothing solid. Nothing that felt like an answer. Then one day, I noticed something missing. The letter was gone. I checked the drawer when I was folding laundry. Not to read it, I just wanted to know it was still there. But it wasn't. The notebook was in a different spot too. I don't know if he knew I read it. I don't know if he moved it, or burned it, or tore it up. I didn't ask. But it was gone, and that scared me more than finding it had. And then something else happened. I picked him up from school early one day. He had a dentist appointment, and I figured we'd get food after. While we were driving, he asked me something that hit harder than I expected. "Hey, Mom, if someone told you they almost gave up, but changed their mind, would you think they were weak?" I kept my eyes on the road. My hands were tied on the wheel. "No," I said. "I'd think they were brave." He nodded like that made sense. Then he stared out the window for a long time. That night, I heard him crying. First time in years. Not loud, just that quiet, broken breathing you don't want anyone to hear. I stood outside his door and almost knocked. But I didn't. And here's where it turned again. A week later, Zach came home angry. Really angry. He slammed the door, stomped up the stairs, and didn't speak a word to me. I waited. I gave him an hour. Then I knocked on his door. "What?" he said, voice flat. "Can I come in?" Silence. Then a shrug sound, like he didn't care. I walked in and saw his laptop open, papers everywhere. His face was red. He'd clearly been crying again. "What happened?" I asked. He shook his head. "Nothing. Zach." He looked at me. And for the first time, he snapped. "Why are you always watching me now?" I froze. "You act like I'm gonna disappear or something." "I'm fine. I'm not doing anything. Just leave me alone, okay?" I opened my mouth to say something, anything, but nothing came out. I couldn't tell him about the letter. I couldn't say, "I know you almost didn't make it." That would break something. So I just nodded. Okay, I said quietly. Okay. I left the room. And that was the first night I really questioned myself, whether I'd done the right thing staying quiet. Whether I'd protected him or just avoided the truth because I was scared of what he'd say. Because deep down, I knew something had happened that day at school. Something he wasn't ready to talk about. But I didn't have a way in. Not without bringing up the letter. And maybe it was time I did. I didn't say anything the next morning. I made him breakfast, left it on the table, and didn't hover. He came down late, eyes tired, hair a mess. He picked at his food, didn't say much. That afternoon, I got a call from the school. It was his guidance counselor. She said Zach had skipped his last 2 classes. He'd been seen leaving campus around noon. He hadn't answered her follow-up texts. She sounded concerned, said he hadn't been participating in class lately, seemed distracted, withdrawn. My stomach dropped. I texted him immediately. No response. I waited. An hour. 2. Still nothing. Around 6, the front door finally opened. Zach walked in like it was nothing. No explanation. No apology. I asked, "Where were you?" He shrugged. Just out. Out where? Nowhere. Just, around. His eyes weren't meeting mine. There was something in his face I hadn't seen before, not anger, not sadness. Something colder. Like he was trying to detach from everything. Zach, I said carefully, you can't just leave school without telling someone. They called me. I was worried. He didn't answer. Just stood there in the doorway, his backpack still on. You don't have to talk about it, I added, softer this time. But you can't shut me out either. You can't go missing and expect me to be okay with it. Then he said something that really scared me. I didn't mean to come back. I blinked. What? I was gonna leave. Like, really leave. Not just school. I sat at the train station for 2 hours trying to figure out if I had enough to get somewhere far. His voice didn't shake. It was quiet. Matter of fact. I stared at him. And then I got cold, he said. That's the only reason I came home. I got cold. That's it. He walked past me into the kitchen, opened the fridge like it was any other night, and pulled out the orange juice. I stood there in the hallway, completely still. That was the moment I realized the letter wasn't just a one-time thing. It wasn't some passing thought he had and moved on from. He was still in that place. Still fighting it. And I was on the outside looking in, holding on to a secret I no longer had the luxury of protecting. The next day, I booked an appointment for him. With the same therapist. Told him about it over breakfast. You don't have to go, I said. But the appointment's there if you want it. He didn't say yes. But he didn't say no either. And then, 2 nights later, I found something else. He'd left his hoodie on the couch. I picked it up and felt something hard in the pocket. I reached in. It was a bottle of pills. Not prescription. Some kind of sleep aid. Nearly full. I didn't even realize I'd sat down on the stairs until I felt how cold the step was against my legs. My hand was shaking so badly I nearly dropped the bottle. I put it back. Didn't confront him. Not yet. I just sat there in the dark living room, staring at the TV that wasn't on, and wondered how close I was to losing him again. The appointment day came. I didn't remind him. I just told him again that morning, quiet, while I was pouring coffee, therapists at 3:30. I'll drive you if you want. He said nothing. Didn't nod. Didn't look up. I came home from work early just in case. At 3:15, he walked into the living room with his shoes on. Let's go, he said. The session was quiet. I stayed in the waiting room. Pretended to scroll my phone but kept looking at the door. After an hour, he came out. Said nothing. Got in the car. Rolled down the window and let the wind blow in. No music. No talking. He stared out the window all the way home. That night, he stayed in his room. I heard him talking softly. Not on the phone. Just, to himself, maybe. Or into a notebook. The next few days were a little lighter. Still quiet, but not as sharp around the edges. He ate more. Slept earlier. Even made a sarcastic joke when I burned the toast. I started to hope. Just a little. Then, a week later, I came home to flashing red and blue lights. A police cruiser was parked in front of our house. My heart slammed into my ribs. I ran to the front door. An officer was speaking to Zach in the living room. He looked calm, too calm. "What's going on?" I asked. The officer looked at me. "Ma'am, are you the parent or guardian?" "Yes, what happened?" Zach wouldn't look at me. The officer sighed. "There was an incident at school. Another student was found with a group text thread that included threats, and your son's name came up." I felt the floor shift again. "No threats from him," the officer added quickly. "But he was part of the thread." Apparently, he responded in ways that raised concern. "It looks like it started as a joke. But given recent behavior, the school's doing a safety check." I looked at Zach. He looked like he wasn't even in the room. The officer left after about 10 minutes. Said there wouldn't be charges, but the school might require counseling. After he left, I asked Zach, "What did you say in that chat?" He finally looked at me. "I didn't say I was going to hurt anyone. I just said I didn't care if something bad happened to me." Then he added, "I didn't think anyone was listening anyway." And I felt that like a punch to the chest. It was the first time he'd said it out loud. He wasn't angry. He wasn't yelling. He just sounded empty. And suddenly it was all right there, everything I'd been trying not to say. The letter. The pills. The nights he wandered around the house like a ghost. The way he came home that one night only because he got cold. All of it. But I still couldn't say it. Not yet. He still doesn't know I read the letter. He never asked, and I never told him. And maybe that's the only way we could keep moving forward, by pretending we're both fine, even when we're not. Sometimes I watch him laugh now, and I wonder how close I really was to losing him. And then I smile back, because that's what you do when the person you love is still here, but not all the way. I guess this is just what it means to be grateful and terrified at the same time. And every time he leaves the house, I still check his room like it's a habit I can't break, just in case he decides not to come back.